So, nice weather we're having. Have you ever said those words and immediately wanted to disappear? That sinking feeling when you realize you've become the person you never wanted to be. Someone boring. I remember the exact moment I realized I was that person. Standing at a networking event, surrounded by people having animated conversations, while I cycled through the same tired questions. What do you do? Where are you from? Been busy lately? Each one landing with the enthusiasm of a tax audit. It wasn't that I didn't have interesting thoughts. It wasn't that I lacked knowledge or experiences worth sharing. I just couldn't seem to bridge the gap between the rich internal world in my head and the awkward small talk coming out of my mouth. And I watched as others, people with no more intelligence, no more accomplishments, no more inherent worth than me, somehow magnetized rooms, created instant connections, and left conversations with new opportunities, friendships, and possibilities. The truth hit me like a revelation. I wasn't boring. I just lacked specific, learnable skills that no one had ever taught me. You see, we spend years in school learning calculus and chemistry, memorizing historical dates and geographical borders, but not a single day learning how to meaningfully connect with another human being. We're expected to figure it out naturally, as if conversation skills are somehow encoded in our DNA. They're not. And if you've ever felt that disconnect, that frustrating gap between how interesting you know you are and how interesting you appear in conversation, you're experiencing the consequence of this massive educational blind spot. Dr. Gillian Sandstrom's research highlights how even brief social interactions like small talk can significantly enhance our well-being and sense of connection, suggesting just how essential these everyday conversations are to our social fabric. Yet most of us never learn how to leverage these moments effectively. This isn't just about social discomfort. This disconnect affects everything: your career trajectory, your relationships, your mental well-being, and ultimately, your sense of belonging in the world. But what if I told you that the research also shows something remarkable? That transforming your conversational abilities isn't just possible, it's systematic, learnable, and can revolutionize every aspect of your life. Being interesting isn't a personality trait you're born with, it's a skill you can develop. And over the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how. Here's what most people get wrong. They think great conversation is about being clever, witty, or having fascinating things to say. The research tells a different story. Charles Duhigg's book, Super Communicators, explores how masterful communicators understand something fundamental that others miss. Conversations aren't one thing. They're three entirely different experiences happening simultaneously. Every meaningful exchange operates on practical, emotional, and identity levels. Most people focus exclusively on the practical, the surface information, while completely missing the deeper currents that create true connection. Think about it. When you ask a colleague, "How's your project going?" you're not just requesting a status update, you're engaging in an emotional exchange about their stress levels and satisfaction. And on an even deeper level, you're affirming their identity as a valuable contributor. This perspective shift changes everything. When you begin seeing conversations as multidimensional, not just exchanges of information, but opportunities for emotional resonance and identity affirmation, suddenly the path forward becomes clear. As Tony Robbins puts it, to effectively communicate, we must realize that we are all different in the way we perceive the world and use this understanding as a guide to our communication with others. This isn't about manipulating others. It's about deepening your understanding of human connection. It's about recognizing that behind every conversation lies an opportunity to satisfy our most fundamental need, to be seen, heard, and valued. Most advice about improving conversation skills focuses on willpower and techniques. Just ask better questions. Be more confident. Remember people's names. These tips fail because they treat symptoms, not causes. The research reveals something profoundly different. Truly engaging conversations emerge from systems, not willpower. In 2022, researchers analyzing 1,656 recorded conversations discovered specific patterns in successful interactions. It wasn't about memorizing clever lines. It was about creating environments where genuine connection could flourish. Here's the system that transforms ordinary conversations into extraordinary connections. First, assessment. Begin by honestly evaluating your current conversational patterns. Research published in BMC Medical Research Methodology has developed tools to assess conversation skills, particularly useful in evaluating interventions in various contexts. Where do your conversations typically break down? Are you speaking to inform, to connect emotionally, or to affirm identity? Second, intentional presence. Stephen Covey's insight that the biggest communication problem is we do not listen to understand. We listen to reply reveals our greatest obstacle. True presence means temporarily suspending your own narrative to fully inhabit another's perspective. Third, conversational mapping. Recognize which of the three conversation types you're engaged in, practical, emotional, or identity, and consciously adapt your approach. This isn't about being inauthentic, it's about speaking the right language for the moment. Fourth, micro-connections. Dr. Sandstrom's research confirms that small talk isn't small at all. Brief, authentic exchanges boost mood, energy, and belonging. These micro-connections build the neural pathways for deeper connection. I discovered this accidentally when forced to take my building's elevator during stairwell repairs. An 82-year-old former anthropology professor named Eleanor changed my perspective with our daily 30-second conversations. When you're my age, she told me, you start keeping track of the small things. They add up to more than you'd think. I noticed that on days when I had these brief exchanges, I arrived at work more energized and engaged in meetings. What I had dismissed as meaningless small talk was actually building my capacity for connection in all areas of my life. Fifth, reflective practice. After meaningful conversations, briefly reflect on what worked, what didn't, and what you learned. This creates a feedback loop that continuously strengthens your connection abilities. The worst professional feedback I ever received came on a post-it note. Presentation needs work. Too technical. Initially defensive, I forced myself to review the recording of my presentation while focusing not on content but on audience reactions. When I asked my manager for more specific guidance, she explained I wasn't connecting technical solutions to clients' business concerns. I developed a 3-column approach for every presentation. What do they need to know? How should they feel? Why does this matter to who they are? 6 months later, this system helped me land our biggest client, who told me, this is exactly what we've been looking for. This systematic approach replaces exhausting social effort with effortless engagement. The difference is transformative. Let's be honest about the challenges you'll face on this journey. First, there's the resistance of habit. Your brain has established neural pathways around conversation. When you try to change these patterns, you'll feel uncomfortable. This isn't failure, it's growth. Studies on communication skills training for social work students demonstrate that growth often happens during periods of practice and adaptation. The moments when you're stretching beyond your comfort zone are often when the most significant learning occurs. Then there's the fear of vulnerability. Opening yourself to genuine connection means risking rejection. But here's what the research reveals. The conversations we regret most aren't the ones where we risked too much. They're the ones where we held back from authentic expression. My relationship with my brother had been reduced to brief, surface-level calls for 20 years. Then our father had a heart attack, forcing us together in a hospital waiting room. After 2 days of purely practical conversation about medical decisions, something shifted at 2 a.m. in the cafeteria. Remember when he taught us to drive? My brother asked unexpectedly. That simple question opened a conversation that operated on all 3 levels: practical memories, emotional healing, and reconnection with our identities as brothers. I realized we'd been having entirely different conversations for years. I'd been seeking emotional connection while he'd been responding with practical information. By consciously adapting to engage all 3 dimensions, we rebuilt a relationship neither of us thought possible. You'll also encounter environments and relationships that resist your growth. Some people become uncomfortable when your communication style evolves because it disrupts established dynamics. The solution isn't brute force persistence, it's strategic implementation. Start with low-stakes interactions where you feel safe practicing new approaches. Find a conversation partner, someone on a similar journey with whom you can practice and reflect. Develop environmental triggers that remind you to implement your system in challenging situations. Celebrate small wins to reinforce your progress. Remember Pat McMillan's wisdom: excellent communication doesn't just happen naturally. It is a product of process, skill, climate, relationship, and hard work. The obstacles are real, but they're also navigable. And what waits on the other side is worth every moment of challenge. Imagine waking up tomorrow with the absolute certainty that you can connect meaningfully with anyone you encounter. Not because you've memorized clever lines or techniques, but because you've developed something far more valuable: a deep understanding of human connection and a system for creating it consistently. Think about how this transforms your life. Professional opportunities that once seemed closed suddenly open because you can create genuine rapport with decision makers. Research indicates that communication skills significantly contribute to leadership emergence and career development, with studies showing that effective communicators are more likely to be recognized as leaders in their organizations. Relationships deepen as everyday conversations transform from transactional exchanges to meaningful connections. Imagine the quality of your closest relationships when they're nourished by conversations that operate on all three levels: practical, emotional, and identity. Your sense of belonging in the world fundamentally shifts. Dr. Sandstrom's research confirms that even brief positive social interactions significantly increase our sense of community connection and overall well-being. And perhaps most importantly, your relationship with yourself evolves. As you become more skillful in understanding others, you develop greater compassion for your own journey. This transformation isn't distant or theoretical. It begins the moment you decide to implement this system, and it grows with every conversation you have. The research is clear. We aren't born great communicators or poor ones. We simply develop systems that either enhance or inhibit connection, and you now have access to a system proven to create extraordinary connections. Your journey to becoming a masterful communicator starts now, not through force of will, but through understanding, practice, and the consistent application of this research-backed system. Every great connection begins with a simple decision. Will you continue as you have been, or will you take the first step toward transformation? The choice is yours, and your next conversation could be the beginning of a whole new way of being in the world and establishing better connections with acquaintances, colleagues, partners, your family, and more.